Bowls buddies, hello and welcome to the second episode of Bowler's World's Blast from the Past. And if you remember last week, I said we'd be going back to December 1980, and that's exactly what we're going to do. First of all, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure to have you back. And I just hope I'm keeping you entertained for a little bit during these terrible, terrible times. Firstly, guys, if you enjoy this video, please hit the like button. And if you're not already a Bowls buddy and a member of this wonderful community of ours, please hit that subscribe button. It's free of charge. And don't forget, hit the notification bell for notifications of new content on the channel, which is currently 3 times a week. Fantastic. So, Bowler's World 1980. I think you enjoyed these last week, so let's see what we can talk about this week. So first on the list, there you go, Bowler's World, number 29, December 1980. Main headlines: Carry On Girls. Round 1 to ladies in Battle of the Sexes. Wow. Bowling's Battle of the Sexes has taken a dramatic and unexpected turn, with the ladies beginning to believe they have a foot firmly in the door of what has been a male monopoly for nearly 80 years. The sudden optimism is the result of a surprising acceptance by the Greater Manchester Association and full British Crown Green Association of an application for membership by the Trafford Evening Bowls League. This new organisation starts its first season next year, with men and women playing side by side in a mixed league. What's all that about? How can that be allowed? The British Crown Green have been firmly against allowing women into its setup since its formation back in 1907. The women have come under the umbrella of the British Parks for purposes of running the All England Ladies Merit, but apart from that have been kept clearly out in the cold. Now, this registration of the Trafford Evening League could lead to women playing in the Greater Manchester team events, and really it puts the men on the spot. So, I don't see the issue personally, but that's because I'm an enlightened 21st century man. I was brought up playing in the Haslingden League and the Rosendale League, and there were open leagues. There was no age limit, there was no men only rule. So I found it really surprising when I started playing in other leagues that they were men only. And I'd never come across a ladies league until I was maybe nearly 20 years old. I just assumed everyone played together, but no, and it doesn't seem that long ago, 40 years ago, that men and women were playing completely separately. Now, whether that's because the men wanted to be separate or the women wanted to be separate is totally debatable. I've heard arguments both ways. I know a lot of women that don't want to play against men because they don't like it, and vice versa. So, I'm not going down that road. I just found that really, really interesting that a mixed bowls league was seen as a massive issue when it came to affiliating to a county. And if you read the article yourself, you'll see that there were already leagues that were mixed, already affiliated, but they just didn't know, which sums things up to me. Here we go. Eddie Elson, the guy who, well, reinvented Crown Green Bowls and dragged it into the 20th century, getting rid of the amateur status and getting more sponsorship in. He said, "I suppose in a way we've been caught with our pants down by this registration. When the matter was raised at our meeting, 1 or 2 delegates revealed that mixed leagues had operated in their counties for some years. I believe Staffordshire, for instance, have had them for 20 years. 20 years? Wow!" So, I know in the past I've been called a male chauvinist pig and all the rest of it, but I'm all for mixed bowling. We're all equal on a bowling green, and I've lost to plenty of women throughout my career, and I don't see the issue. They've 2 bowls, we've all got 2 bowls, and the game is the same whether you're male, female, not sure, pansexual, whatever you want. I don't know why you want to have sex with pans, but let's not go down there. So that was page 1. And on page 2, there's a cut-out and keep guide to the champions of 1980, which is interesting to say the least. And there's a lot of names that crop up time and time again, like Brian Duncan, Noel Burrows, etc. But there's one here, the Greater Manchester Open. Mike Holden from Rochdale. Well, he wouldn't have been living in Rochdale then, he'd been in Harperhay. But yeah, Mike Holden, fantastic. And Ken Strutt, he appears quite a lot. All the names I remember when I started playing as a teenager, they were still winning things then. Alan Broadus is on there. Jack Taylor was a wonderful player from Rochdale who I never got to see play unfortunately. Roy Connell, an old pal of mine that passed away last year, I think it was, won the Waterloo Spring Handicap. And just below him, Waterloo Junior winner 1980, Stuart Mort. Now, by my reckoning, he was already 30 then, in 1980. So I don't know how we got to play in Junior Waterloo. Only joking, Stuart, only joking. That's when you had hair and could play a bit, innit it, pal? Yes. And there we have the ladies. British Parks winner Liz Chapman, Fleetwood Festival winner Pat Waring, Isle of Man Festival Elsie Bland, and the Waterloo Merrill Jones. So there's 4 women's competitions and I don't know, 50 men's competitions listed there. I don't know what that says, but page 4, we've got Tyke celebrate county victory, and there's a couple of legends. Jackie Horsfield with the big whiskey glass, and Alan Thompson on the right. Eddie Elson, I think it is, in the middle. No, it's not. Sorry, that's Jeff Sykes. Of course, it's Jeff Sykes, isn't it? Alan Sykes' dad, and Stuart Richardson in the background. Yorkshire the right side then, 1980. Yeah, right side. They'd only won it 3 times in the previous 20 years apparently, which is fascinating. Just below that we've got Broadus name on the trophy again. Alan Broadus from Aspel splashed his way to victory in the Chloride £800 floodlit handicap. Played under the worst weather conditions since the event began 10 years ago. I always thought Alan was a bit of a thrutcher. Don't forget the previous year, 1979, he'd lost in the final of the Waterloo to Brian Duncan. And it goes on, it was particularly pleasing victory for Broadus, whose late father Roland won the event in 1972. So there you go. Alan Broadus beat Brian Dickinson, I think it is, yeah, 41-22. They were hardy guys back then, playing 41 up in ridiculous conditions. I don't know. Then on page 5 we've got the letters page. And I should have really looked this up before, but there's a guy called William Derbyshire who's written in, sort of complaining about a piece that was written about him when he lost in the final of the Waterloo with Albert Ringrose from Bradford. And I will just read it out because it tickled me, and I know if it tickled me it'll tickle you. I would like to clarify a point in Mr. Thornley's look back at 32 years of the Waterloo handicap. That's a strange number to look back on, isn't it? 32 years. He writes about Albert Ringrose's Waterloo win and about me never being in the hunt, but he does not know the real truth of that final. What was it? Was it fixed? Was it a carvel? What was it? Ringrose was the clown prince of bowling, no doubt about that, but he was not as good as he was made out to be. I know one man who beat him 21-0 for a £20 side bet at the Springfield Hotel Wigan at the same period. Although he played several money matches in the Wigan area, he would not play me on any green in Wigan. I think he feels a bit hard done to, does our William. I'm not sure what the real truth of the matter is. Obviously, we'll never find that out, but maybe he's just saying he lost to a player that couldn't bowl, but that can't be right, can it? Because he won the Waterloo, and there's only me, the worst bowler to ever win the Waterloo, who can have that accolade. And then he goes on another matter, the Waterloo handicap organisers have come under considerable criticism for this year's prices, particularly from the bowling contingent. There's no surprise there. Bit harsh, and on page 1 the guy's passed away, Tom Bradley. So anyway, a bowler who entered paid £2.50 entrance fee, 25 pence practice, 30 pence entrance to the green and 15 pence per programme. All this on top of travelling expenses. It is the bowlers after all who provide the entertainment. Well, so why should they be penalised in this way? The majority I have talked to think it's time for a revision. Yes, indeed, a time for a revision. Fancy having to pay just over £3. Maybe that was a lot of money in 1980. I'm not sure what the average wage was, but £3 doesn't seem that much. I might be wrong, of course. I'm not sure if at this point it was still one game a visit for the Waterloo, and if it was, yeah, you've got the added petrol cost, but it still seems pretty cheap to me. Especially when you think now you're paying £20, £15, £25 entries, and well, let's not get into that because I've already done that one. And then on the same page there's a letter from J. Dowd from Orrell. When the running just has to stop. Now, if you remember, 1980 was the year Vernon Lee won the Waterloo, and it was quite controversial because he was running and dancing round his balls and also his opponent's balls. And the crowd and the TV loved it, but of course it was totally against British Crown Green rules. But at the time the Waterloo had their own set of rules, and Vernon didn't do anything wrong according to those. It wasn't until Jack Lee got his feet under the table he decided to change the rules of the Waterloo and go to the British Crown Green ones. But it was very controversial at the time. You had the Parks guys, the guys that just played social bowling, up in arms about it, and everyone else thought it was brilliant, and there was nobody really in between. Anyway, this is the letter. I have been a Crown Green bowler for a number of years and have seen many changes, i.e. the antics some of the bowlers get up to and the changes in the rules of Crown Green bowling. What puzzles me is the fact we appear to have certain rules for well-known bowlers and a different set of rules for the not so well-known. For example, a friend and myself entered the Waterloo handicap this year. In the first round, my friend Mr H. Postlethwaite from Wigan went on to be a panel bowler and ran Wigan subs for many years, who is a recognised runner of the bowls, was stopped chasing his woods despite the fact he was 2 to 3 yards behind his woods. In the final, Vernon Lee was not only allowed to run his own woods in and step over them at the death, he was also allowed to run his opponent's woods out. I'm afraid if Vernon Lee had played me, half his woods would have been punted into the gutter. Maybe your readers have some comments to make about this apparent contradiction of the rules. So there you go. Consistency of refereeing is something that we still mourn about to this day. Some players seem to get treated differently to others, and I know that I've said the same thing. If Vernon if I'd have been playing Vernon and he ran my balls out, we would have been having words on the green. But it was almost acceptable back then, including wafting and all sorts that you just don't get away with these days. But I thought it was quite interesting, those letters. The next page is page 10, and remember in 1980, so 40 years ago, Bancroft lights shining. Following in his father Neville's winning footsteps of 3 years ago, John Bancroft completed a unique father and son double in the Saddleworth Floodlit Open Tournament when the promising 17-year-old Hyde player beat Yorkshire County man David Blackburn 21-16. Leading 12-7, Blackburn, a former winner, looked all set for another trip to the Engravers, but the talented teenager turned the tables on his more experienced opponent, scorching to a sizzling 9 break in the long corner corners of the soggy Saddleworth Green. Showing a typical Yorkshire fight back, the Huddersfield man recovered to 16-19, but a bad lead let the youngster in for a winning double to clinch the coveted trophy and £100 first prize. And I think that's probably the first time anyone had come across John Bancroft, and John went on to have an amazing career, winning the Bass Masters, winning the Waterloo, winning all sorts, winning the Talbot Trophy, and he doesn't play now. Made a bit of a comeback a few years ago, turned out for Greater Manchester, but that was about it. And I have John as one of the very best that's played, you know. He could have been my man of the 90s actually, if I had to change my opinion. And then just the last thing, on the back page there's an entry form for the Wire Bowling Festival, also known as the Fleetwood Festival, and prize money £2,000, entry fee £2, including 2 admissions to the presentation dance. Fantastic that. Now they had a free junior competition as well, which I used to enter, for under 14s, and it was always under 14s, and I lost in the final I think to Jimmy Darby. I can't remember the year now, might have been 14, so mid 80s, somewhere around there, mid 80s. And what always struck me about the Wire Festival was how big it got. They ended up with thousands of entries. They get something like 1,800 male entries and maybe 1,000 ladies entering, and you had to queue up on a Wednesday to get your entry form in. That really was one of the big success stories of the 80s, the Wire Festival, and alas, like everything else, just fallen by the wayside really. I know that they're trying to resurrect it, but it used to be a wonderful sight, the 4 greens on the front there, Marine Hall, 4 greens all packed, all the places on the it's not a veranda, is it? Palisade, that's a good word, absolutely covered in deck chairs and people watching, and bowls companies with all their stalls set up at the back, and that's where I bought my first set of Drake's Pride bowls, £2.13. Couldn't lift a £2.13 bowl now. Dennis Mercer sold it me just after he'd won the Waterloo, so maybe I'd have been 85, 86, somewhere around there. I remember it quite vividly. 85 I think. Yeah, because he died not long after, so I might stand corrected on that date. But anyway, headed times, 1980, start of 2 decades of growth for the game really, and looking back, the prize money that's advertised isn't that brilliant. You know, the monies that they were playing for didn't seem a lot. £800 total prize money, things like that. If you consider we're playing for the same sorts of prize money now, it was probably quite a bit of money back then. So I'm going to leave it there. I've done nearly 20 minutes. Hope you've enjoyed that. I'm not sure which one I'm going to do next week. I've got a few options. I don't know how to do a positive one because we're coming up to Christmas, or a Nelly negative one. I'll see how I feel next week. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please hit that like button, and don't forget I'll be here on Wednesday talking about bowls, which is what we all seem to be enjoying because we can't do a lot of it at the minute. So thanks for watching, stay safe, remember to put your mask on if you're going out shopping, and I'll see you Wednesday. Bye for now.